I hate filming wrap-ups. Hey, it's Kayla, and today I'm doing my October wrap-up and drinking a Shiner Bock. So in October I read 10 books and 6 comics. I participated in 2 readathons, which were the Books in the Freezer readathon at the beginning of the month, and then the Spooktober readathon towards the end of the month. Some other stats, because I'm trying to, you know, see if I can make this any more enjoyable for anybody out there. I had 4 5-star reads, 10 4 stars, that's such a big number, and 2 3 stars. So I had a really good reading month. Demographics, I read 1 middle grade, 5 YA, 1 new adult, and 9 adult. I read my books 3 physical books, 11 ebooks or e-comics, and 5 audiobooks. And the genres I read were 3 fantasy, 12 horror, and 1 thriller. I'm already exhausted. I hate wrap-ups. I hate filming wrap-ups. Going in chronological order, last month I tried doing from least to most favorite, and it kind of ate my soul, so going back to chronological. I read Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I read this as an ebook from my library, and I gave it 5 stars, obviously. This is book 6 in the Throne of Glass series, and it's the book that was originally going to be a novella about Cowell. I say Cowell, not Kale. Sorry. But it got turned into a big book and sticks out like a sore thumb in the series, but I still loved it. It was great. I also spoiled myself for the big information in that book, so that was fun. But yeah, love this book, love the new characters. Still just wasn't a fan of Nesrin, but I loved everybody else. And yeah, I just wish that Maas weaved it into the main series just like all the other books. Okay, next are my Books in the Freezer reads, and that was a 2-week readathon. And I actually completed that readathon. I read all the books that were on my TBR. The first one I read was Cold Moon Over Babylon by Michael McDowell. I read this as an ebook from my library, and I gave it 5 stars, and it's one of my, it's on my favorites list as well. This is the first book that ever really scared me. It is a Southern Gothic book about revenge. It's also a ghost story, and it's gory, and it's sad, and it's just all the things. And it's a pretty short book, but it's just has just so much packed into this little story, and it really just seeped in. And I wasn't scared when I was like sitting there reading it, but when I like put the book down and had to like go do something in my house, I would like get scared. I'd be like looking around the doors, and like little noises would like scare me, like would make me really jumpy. When I finished the book, my heart was racing, and I had to like watch cartoons afterwards, just like a scary movie. So I've never had that experience with a book before, and this one did. So I was just fully immersed in this world, in this story, and I loved it. So if you're looking for a horror book, I definitely recommend that one. And then I read the Bazaar of Bad Dreams by Stephen King. This is a short story collection. I technically started this, when did I start this? I started this a little bit before the readathon, but I read a bulk of it during the 2 weeks, and I read, like I own this obviously, but I read about half of it physical and the other half audiobook from my library, which is really good because the audiobook for this one is like a large cast, so each story has a different narrator or narrators for each story, so you're not just listening to the same voice for, you know, 20 stories. This collection, like most of its collections, are hodgepodge of longer short stories, shorter short stories. There's 2 poems in here that I hated. Those were the worst part of this book. sci-fi horror, traditional horror. Yeah, this is really good. I gave it 4 stars. And some standouts was Mile 81, which was the first story, I believe. And Mile 81 is about this like abandoned rest stop off the highway, and there's a broken down car and things happen at that rest stop. And the dune was really good. This was about like this little island with a sand dune on it, and someone's name would be written in the sand, and whoever's name was written in the sand, that person would die. Blockade Billy, this one I really loved, but it was very slow. Like, it was very drawn out. I feel like if it was edited a little bit more, it would have been way better. But this one is about a baseball player named Blockade Billy, and I think he's a catcher, and it's just about him and his rise to fame coming from like the minor league team and making his way to the major leagues, and his like short-lived career there until he gets like arrested and thrown in jail. And then finally the cookie jar, which this is like a sci-fi horror about this man who's telling a story about his eccentric mom who had this cookie jar that was always full of cookies, fresh made cookies, and it never emptied of cookies. And also obviously some weird shit happens, but that was such a good one, so unique. Okay, so next in the readathon, I read Ice Cream Man Volume 1 by Maxwell W. Prince. This was an e-comic I got from my library, and I gave it 3 stars. And it was illustrated by Martin Morazzo. This one I was so excited for. This is a horror comic, obviously, and it's like anthology style. There's only 4 stories in this, and they're all happen in the same town, and it's kind of like, it reminds me of The Crypt Keeper, like that old show where like the ice cream man is kind of like the narrator, or he's like presenting these stories to you, or like these ice creams to you, and so like each story is like a different ice cream flavor. And the stories are okay, and it's all in the same town, and the way it ends on a good note where you think there's room for more of a plot, because otherwise it's just kind of stories and they're not that good. So 3 stars. I will continue on. I'll read the next volume, but in the hopes that there's more of plot that kind of ties things together better, and like who the ice cream man is, stuff like that. And then I read The Ruins by Scott B. Smith. I read this as a physical book and an audiobook from my library, and I gave this one 4 stars. So I started reading this physically, and I couldn't get through it. Like, it felt like it was so slow. And I don't know if it's because it's set up where it doesn't have any chapters. Like, it kind of does, because like there's different like space breaks, and during those breaks you change POV from different characters in the book. But I don't know what it was, but for some reason it was dragging. So I picked up the audiobook, loved the audiobook. And this is a travel horror about these college kids. They're on vacation and they go to Mexico, and they decide to go to, so they're in Mexico and they meet other people. They're vacationing, so they meet some Greeks that they can't understand each other, but they're just partying with each other. And they meet this German man, who this German guy has become friends with them, but he tells them that his younger brother has been gone for a couple days because his younger brother met this woman who was down there in Mexico, who's going to a site for like an archaeological dig type thing at a ruin site. And he left this note and a map on where he is, and so he wants them to go with him to go get his brother back. And so for some reason they agree to go with him, and the story is just their journey to this ruin site and what happens there. And it is so good. There is a movie made out of it. I haven't seen it. I did read the Wikipedia page, and it's pretty similar Just like with most movies, some things are different. But the book was so good. It was so vivid. The horror elements in here are very unique. I was a little disappointed at first when I found out what was causing the horror. I was like, is this really what it's about? But it's really good. It gets good. And it plays on, you know, the psyche of people, like how when you're kind of pinned up against the wall, like how your true colors will show. So it's like these people aren't the best people, but they get worse and worse and worse as things go along. So I mean, if you don't like reading about horrible people, you might not like this, but it was really good. It was really fun to read and very unique. Okay, next I read Clean Room Volume 1 by Gail Simone, illustrated by John Davis Hunt. I gave this 4 stars, and I read this as an e-comic through my library. This is a horror comic, horror sci-fi for sure. Okay, so it's pitched as this woman's husband killed himself after reading this certain book. And so the wife is on like this vigilante quest to uncover what the hell this book is about. She's also an investigative journalist. And in part, that is what it's about. Like, that's what this first volume is about. But this book is written by this woman who is kind of this, like, leader of this, like, self-help movement. But it's very cult-like. And so you slowly kind of peel back the layers of, like, what this place is. And then the clean room aspect is there is this room where your deepest, darkest fears come to life, but for a purpose. And I don't really want to spoil it because I don't want to. But yeah, this is really weird. It's very gory, very gruesome. But yeah, it took a turn I did not expect coming. Like, why this was all happening. Like, you get that premise, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that's happening. But I feel like that's kind of part of the journey. Like, it's not in the blurb for a reason. So I picked up volume 2. I am continuing on. The artwork is very pretty, very gory, very weird, but it starts to make sense once you read through and you finish the first volume. It kind of starts coming together. I'm rusty. I haven't done this forever. Okay, my last read for the books in the freezer was Confessions by Kanae Minato. I gave this 4 stars. I read this as an ebook and an audiobook through my library. This is a thriller, and it is a Japanese-based thriller, so it's a translated work, and it is about this teacher, like a middle school teacher, who on the last day of school tells her kids why she's not coming back to school. She had lost her daughter that same year before, and so not only did she lose her daughter, but she knows it was a murder, and she knows that 2 of her students did it. And so that's how it starts off. It's divided into 4 different sections, I think 4 or 5 different sections. Each chapter, so they're long chapters, so it's 4 sections, a point of view from each one, and you slowly figure out what the hell, what happened. It's very crazy, but it's very twisty, and it's really good. The audiobook has different voice actors, so you have different voice actors for the different POVs. Very unlikable characters. And this one also is very kind of far-fetched, it's kind of silly if you think about it, but it's also kind of unique. The middle schoolers are the ones that are getting pinned for this horrible horrible thing that happened. So that's one point of view, and then you get some of the students' point of views, ones that are accused and ones that aren't accused, and then you get a sibling's point of view. And it's just kind of what that action, what that teacher did in that classroom, how it affects all those people's lives. So it's really good. If you're looking for a thriller, that's like my #1 thriller recommendation of lately, just because it really did surprise me. It really captivated me. Like, I wanted just to sit there and read it. Like, I think I read it all in one day, actually, or at least, or 2 days. Okay, these next reads are just ones that I read because I wanted to. So I read Thornhill by Pam Smy. I gave it 4 stars, and I read this as an ebook, e-comic from my library. This is like a graphic novel, like literally. So like, this is about Thornhill, which is a orphanage, and it's told through the perspective of 2 girls. One is in the past, and it's diary entries, so it's like written diary entries with text. And then the present is from this other girl, and it's just panels with no text at all. It's just wordless panels of what she's doing and how these 2 girls intercept each other, and it kind of unfolds their life story. It's very quiet. It's very heartbreaking and lonely and sad. Really cool read if you're interested in that. I think it's marked as horror just because of the unsettlingness that you get and like the topics that are kind of in talked about in here. Nothing on the sense of like trigger warning territory, but it's very sad and very emotional. So if you're looking for something sad and emotional, this is your book. Next, I listened to How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. I listened to this on audiobook from my library, and I gave it 3 stars. I originally gave it 4 stars. I bumped it down to 3 just because it was a little forgettable. It is very different from the movie, and I love the movie so much. I'm gonna continue on with the series just to see like what happens. But I mean, it was short, and it was just kind of forgettable overall. And like I said, the movie, I just love the movie way more. But the bones are very similar, where it's this Viking clan, and they only, instead of being at war with the dragons like the movie is in the book, when they come of age, they have to go and steal a dragon egg, or they go steal a baby dragon and raise it themselves. And then they have this like ceremony where they have to like show off their training that they had done with their dragon. And they have to pass certain things to be like indicted into like their clan. Otherwise they're like banished from their clan if their dragon isn't trained properly, basically, is the premise. It's funny, it's silly, I really do like it, but I mean, it was forgettable compared to like other things. Okay, next I read Camp Carnage by Joshua Winning. I feel like this is I don't know, this was written by 2 authors. I didn't write down who the other author was. I give this 4 stars, and I own this ebook. And as of right now, it's still free on Amazon if you want to pick it up. This is a slasher camp horror set in the 80s. And not only is it at a camp, but it's at like a Pray the Gay Away summer camp where parents send their gay kids to go and hope that they come back straight, or whatever, one of those camps. And there's a person that is just killing people, and it is so good. This was so good. For some reason I just couldn't give it 5 stars, but it was 5 stars in enjoyment, if that says anything. It's very visual. Like I can see the movie in my head completely. Like, if you've ever been to summer camp, it's basically like your summer camp, only really, really gay, and someone's out killing people. It's so good. And the kills are really good, and like I can like see like the jump scares in the text, which is really cool. Like you don't always read that. Normally like the jump scares are something that are just selective to movies. I can like see the jump scares in the book, and it didn't really do the things that I thought it was gonna do. I was actually really surprised with what kind of unfolded in this book. So yeah, if you're looking for something campy and fun, like campy little and really gay and really fun, check this out. Like, it was really good. I was so surprised. I loved it. Okay, next I read DeadEndia, The Watcher's Test by Hamish, Steele. This is a comic graphic novel. I give this 5 stars, and I got this from my library. And I read it as like a physical bind up. I love this so much. If you like comics, please, please, please check this out. So this story was originally pitched as like a cartoon short. Like, it was animated as a cartoon short for like Nickelodeon, like in England. And I don't know what became of that, but then the author wanted to expand his story, so he made this as a webcomic. And then he self-published this book, and then it got picked up and it got published as this binding. So like on Goodreads, there's like 2 different versions of this. One is his self-published version, and then one is the bigger publishing company version. Same story, just different ways of publishing. So this is like a horror, sci-fi, fantasy, contemporary. Like, it has all the things, and I feel like anyone would love it. So it takes place at like a Dollywood-esque place where it's like this theme park based off of this famous singer. And in the very middle is a haunted house, and these 20-something-year-olds work there, and it turns out that it's also a portal to hell. So there's demons involved, there's spirits and demons, and like the first story is like one of the characters, his dog ends up getting possessed by a demon, and it goes from there. It is so good. There's very much sci-fi elements. I don't really want to spoil too much because I really want you guys to read this, but it is very, very, very diverse. There's like an ace character, a trans character, a gay character, Muslim character, a possessed dog, demons, all the things. And the artwork is so good. Like, it looks like something you would see on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or whatever, only on paper. So the art is amazing. The story is amazing. It has a very well-rounded story, but then it still ends where it's like it can continue on. And from what I read on the author, because I was obsessed, like I wanted more, I need more now. I think if the sales go well, he'll continue on. I'm assuming he's going to be continuing on in the traditional publishing sense versus webcomics with the series. But I don't know, you never know. But this book was published this year, so there's still time for more in this world. Okay, so these are the last reads of my month, and these are all from the Spooktober readathon. However, I started most of these. I didn't actually finish a single book during Spooktober, so that was like my one fail. But I did participate in some of the video challenges, and I participated in a lot of the video watch-alongs, which were really fun. I didn't participate in any, you know, battle points for the readathon, but I ended up finishing them before October. So okay, so I read The Nightmare Room by Chris Sorensen. I gave this 4 stars. I read this as an ebook off of Kindle Unlimited. Excuse me. This is a haunted house story, but it's very unique. Like, it has like, it took a twist I did not see coming. So if you like haunted house stories, please read this and let me know what you think, because in my experience, it's very different. Like, at first you think like it's this small town, this boy comes back to his hometown, and they move in to, or like they plan to move into his dad's house, but they can't, and so it turns out his dad owned this other property, and so they move into this property, and weird shit happens. And it's kind of like a dual timeline where you get this past version of somebody, we don't know who it is, and it kind of like shows like the original haunting of the house, how it happens, and then those two timelines overlap. Read it. Okay, then I read Tomie by Junji Ito. This is a horror manga that is on my 30 before 30 list, and I gave this 4 stars. I read this as an e-comic, e-manga. This was really good. So this is the succubus manga, and this girl, holy fuck, yeah, she's the worst. So there's a couple story arcs in this entire, like I read the entire collection. So there's a couple story arcs, but most of it is just kind of like anthology style, where it's, here's a story about Tomie ruining these people's lives, and here's the next story is, here's a story about Tomie ruining these other people's lives. And most of them are, you know, like it's kind of repetitive, but each one does something different, and it kind of reveals a little bit more about who Tomie is and like what she does and how long she's been around and weird shit like that. The artwork is really, really good. Normally I'm not a huge fan of manga artwork mainly because of the paper I think that it's printed on, but since I read it digitally, it was very crisp for black and white. The horror panels were so good. I think my favorite one is Hair. That one just was very unique and it sticks out to me. And I actually had a dream. I've never had a dream about a book before, and I remember waking up. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, oh, I dreamt about Tomie. So that happened. I would have definitely been 5 stars if there was more of an overall plot, or if it tied in things that happened in the beginning stories with the end, or wrapped up some kind of way. Like I said, it reads like an urban legend anthology style, where you just see Tomie in these different people's lives, and then she ruins their lives, obviously, because she's just the worst thing in the world. Okay, then I read Strange Weather by Jughead. This is a bind-up of 4 novellas. I listened to this as an audiobook from my library, and I gave it 4 stars. I hated the first book. Not hated, but I didn't like it at all. I was like, oh great, here we go. And also, like, I'm so used to reading short story collections that I don't think I've ever read a bind-up of novellas. So like the stories are a lot longer than what I'm used to, because a novella is longer than a short story. So I was in a weird funk too with that first story. So maybe that first story didn't get as much credit as it deserved. But my favorites were Loaded and Rain. Loaded is about guns. There's like a mass shooting at this mall, and the mall cop comes to the rescue, and so it's about gun safety on like both sides, like, and it's also about race, and it's such a good dialogue, and it has like the best ending I've ever read, and it like gave me chills. So good. I recommend that to everybody to at least read Loaded. It has a lot to say, very powerful, and it's only a novella. Very impressive. And then Rain is about Colorado, and there's like a storm, and it starts to rain nails, or nail-like things, and it's just about you figuring out, why is it raining nails, like what's happening. And it's kind of, it feels almost post-apocalyptic, because these different towns are just like shut down, like the government's not getting to them, they're, you know, people are dying, and it's kind of like everyone's just out on their own fending for themselves. So it reads like that, but when it's really not, like there's still like electricity, like there's still functioning things, but like society still crumbles when this like really bizarre weather phenomenon happens. I love that one. It was so good. Okay, and then I read The Grownup by Gillian Flynn. I gave it 5 stars. Read this as an ebook from my library. This is also a novella or like a short story. Like it's under 100 pages, so it's like really fucking short. This is my last work of Gillian Flynn that I haven't read. This was so good. Like I had no prior knowledge of this book except for like I knew there's a lot of like hand job talk in this book. So yeah, the girl she does like massage therapy, hand jobs. And it's just how she like finds her way woven into this family's life. And you don't know what's true and what's not true. And it's so good. Like just read it, not knowing anything else. Like this could have been explored more and drawn out more and built more into a really, really great novel. But it's still a really fantastic novella. And if you like Gillian Flynn, or I mean if you haven't read Gillian Flynn, try this one out. Seriously. So good. Okay, I'm on my last one. My last read for October was Jughead the Hunger by Frank Tieri and illustrated by Pat and Kim Kennedy. I give this 4 stars. I read this as an e-comic from my library on Hoopla. This is volume 1, by the way. This is part of Archie Horror umbrella. So it's the Archie people in Riverdale, only it's horror, and so crazy things happen. This is like Jughead becomes a werewolf. That's all you need to know. But there's actually like more to it than that. Like I was expecting not a whole lot more. But it's interesting to see like what the other characters, what their role in this story is, and it's really good. So, and it's continuing on. It originally was set up to be like a one-shot, so it's like a one-shot, and then they continued on with the series. I guess it did so well, or they wanted to continue on, or I don't know. But yeah, if you like werewolves, or Archie horror, or whatever, this is really good. The gore factor, well, yeah, I guess there is some panels. I'm just so like numb to it. And it also had issue 1 of Vampironica, so I read that one too. That was okay. The Vampironica reminds me a lot of Buffy. So if you like Buffy, you might like Vampironica, which is also under Archie Horror. Okay, I'm done. I did it. So that's all the stuff I read in October. I had a really great reading month. Please read DeadEndia or The Ruins or Cold Moon Over Babylon or Confessions or The Grownup. I had a great reading month. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Social media stuff below. Let's be friends. See you next time. Bye.